Hi, my name's Christopher Anatra. You know me as the Quantum Businessman. I am sitting down speaking with Eileen Colts. Eileen, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing pretty good. It's really exciting because you're going to be one of the speakers at the upcoming International Mandela Effect Conference that's going to be happening this June. And I wanted to get to know you a little bit better, and I wanted the viewers to also get to know you as well so they can kind of understand who Eileen Colts is. So,
Okay, I'm really excited about it.
cool. So, tell us a little bit about yourself, Eileen, maybe even before the Mandela Effect.
Oh, okay. Well, I come from mainstream media, and I started out at National Public Radio in Chicago, working as a news reporter, and then became their morning news anchor. And then I moved to Germany to work for German broadcasting, like their version of the BBC, when the wall came down in Berlin. And I enjoyed working in Europe and Eastern Europe so much that I just stayed for decades. And eventually I found my way to England and met my husband, had a family, and decided I've had enough of news, and opened up an organic children's nursery school. And then my husband passed away, and I decided that our daughter, being of dual nationality, should see what it's like to live in America. So I left in 1990, and we returned in 2012. And holy moly, the changes that had occurred in the United States from when I left in 1990 and returned in 2012 is unfathomable, really. There were so many changes. And one of them that was not particularly positive was we lost our Ralph Nader and our Phil Donahues, the people that used to keep an eye on government and corporations and banks and report to the people if something was kind of, suspect. So that's the part that I came back. I'm retired, and I thought, I'm going to do alt news. I'm just going to keep an eye out at what's going on, and kind of have a little channel on YouTube called Eileen Colts. And I'll just do little videos if I find something interesting. And boy, did I find something interesting. I bumped into the Mandela Effect, and that changed everything for me. I just started focusing on quantum science and the Mandela Effect, spirituality and the Mandela Effect, comparative religions and the Mandela Effect. And then as a side hobby, I used to tutor astronomy at university. I took astronomy, geology, anthropology, archaeology. I love the hard sciences. So then I started looking into the hard sciences and the Mandela Effect. And that's going to be basically what I'm presenting at this year's International Mandela Effect Conference. I'm going to be looking at what's going on out there through the eyes of hard science that relates to what's going on in here in terms of the Mandela Effect.
Wow, that sounds really fascinating. I have to ask, like, what was the first Mandela Effect thing that really affected you, that made you pause and say that something is really happening here?
Yeah, I had two awakenings. And the first awakening, I didn't know I was awakening to it because it didn't have a name. So when I was the news director at Loyola University News in Chicago, it's a university radio station, but we had several million listeners. So even though it was university news, we had a good following in Chicago. And I went to South Africa in 1984, 85, because I graduated in 85. So I think it was the end of 84. And I applied to interview Nelson Mandela. And my request was declined. They said he was too unwell to receive media interviews. So they gave me an interview with Adrian Vlok, who was the Deputy Minister of Defense, but at the time of Nelson Mandela's imprisonment, he was in charge of prisons. So I spoke to him and did some research and got a good interview, brought it back, aired the interview. There was a lot of information that came out of that interview that's not made public in the Western world concerning his incarceration, but that's a whole nother topic. I don't need to go into that because it's not Mandela related. And then I graduated from university, got my job at National Public Radio, working in the newsroom. A couple of years later, I'm delivering the news locally for Chicago, but we go quiet and listen to the national and international news feed, which comes out of Washington. And as I'm sitting there waiting to do my part, I am hearing constantly for days and weeks reports of Nelson Mandela's death in prison. He never made it out. And tragically, just weeks away from his release on humanitarian grounds. So that puts that at about 1987. Now, moving forward in time, we know people are Mandela affected with his death, which seemed to kick this off, which is why it's called the Mandela Effect, back to the 1980s, like me. And then there's a whole nother group who remember him dying specifically in 1991. And the actual death for him has been recorded twice in 2013 and 2014. So there's even some discrepancy on the official date of death. And I fast forward, I thought he was dead. Now I'm working in Europe, and then I moved to the UK. And in 1995, 10 years later, I'm watching television with my husband, and out steps Nelson Mandela with the Spice Girls doing some live PR event like outside Trafalgar Square.
Wow.
I just stopped and went, wait a minute, this isn't possible. He died back in 1986, 87. How can he step out at this event with the Spice Girls in 1995 in London? And of course, my husband just laughed it off. And I thought, oh, I've got a bad memory. And I thought, more, I must have a really bad memory if I think somebody's dead and now they're alive. It's kind of unsettling.
That's very unsettling. I know for me, I think the title of the movie was called The Invictus or Invictus.
Mm-hmm.
And like Matt Damon was the main character inside of it. And I'm watching this movie and I'm like, Mandela's still alive? Like, is this like what's going on here? Like, he died a long time ago. So yeah.
And when was that? When did you watch the movie? Do you remember what year?
I'd like to say I knew exactly the year, but it was probably around 2013-ish, but I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing that our awakenings were Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Because most people's awakenings are not Nelson Mandela. They are car logos, the Ford logo, the Volkswagen, or stovetop stuffing.
Yeah.
You know, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Something more personal and in your environment that means something to you. That's what I've noticed. Most people tell me. And then, of course, I didn't have a name for it. And around when I moved back here in 2012, I bought a Volkswagen, and the logo on the steering wheel did not have a brake. And I thought, it's really hard to see the V and the W in this. They should have put a brake in there to make it easy. So when you look at it, you see V and W. And when I traded that car in 2016, the logo had changed on my steering wheel, and it had a clear brake between the V and the W. And that was my awakening to the Mandela effect, with a term that this is a phenomenon that actually exists for many, many people, probably millions.
Probably millions. And yeah, everything like that. As you're saying that, I remember there used to be on the rear view mirrors that statement that said objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. And then that changed to that they are closer than they appear. And now they don't have anything, like new model cars don't have any printing on the side mirrors anymore. So it's all very, very fascinating. That's the best way to put it. But otherwise, if you don't know what's going on, you're like when I saw that movie with Matt Damon, this is way before I knew what the Mandela effect was. I just was confused. I was just like, I didn't get it.
So unfortunately, when things like that happened in the past, we would just chalk it up to a really bad memory and then try to forget that our memories were that bad, because it's unsettling.
Exactly.
But my mom was Mandela affected in the 60s and the 70s, because as a child, I'd be driving around with her and she'd hear radio news that some celebrity had just died. And she'd go, no, they didn't. They died 3 years ago, and they had their funeral in this state, and this person showed up. And she'd tell me what they wore and what cars they were driving. She had specific memories of celebrity deaths years before she would hear about their deaths. So I would just go, okay, she must have a bad memory. That's all you can say. You can't say people died twice.
Exactly. I know, like for me too, one of the big things for me was the JFK assassination, because I remembered the different frames of the Zapruder film. I remember frame 237 was the first one where the first bullet hit him and blah. And then to go back and see that it's completely different. The frames don't match up at all. There's so many different, so many different things happen. The extra people in the car, the governor of Texas.
Do you remember it in color? Do you remember the color version?
Yeah, I remember the color version, but it was 8mm 1963 era color, so it was kind of home color. I mean, it was okay. This one, the color is different, and there's like I think where Zapruder was standing when he filmed it is actually different because the angle's different. There's a sign that blocks part of the procession, so you can't see everything. And I was totally confused. I thought like some college kid or something made a interpretation of the event, to find out that that's how the event is in this timeline, like really like unnerved me, like really did. So for me, that was—
It does. It's scary at first. But then once you jump into it and start looking at all the correlations around the Mandela effect, it's not so scary.
Right.
It becomes, okay, this is normal. For instance, spontaneous evolution. If you studied evolution, you would know that there's something called spontaneous evolution, which is where a scientist cannot make a rational explanation between the jump from here to there in a species. It just, boom, happens overnight and happens instantly. And there's no way to account for it. So that's like a species Mandela effect. One day it was like this, and then boom, the next day it was completely different.
Yeah, I use the term forced evolution because I feel that when things become more revealed about what's actually going on, and we're all like in the midst of figuring out what's going on and gathering information and so forth. But I think there's going to be a lot of things that get revealed that start to make sense out of everything, including the evolutionary record. And we'll learn, just like what you're calling it. I happen to call it forced evolution.
Same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Those big jumps that don't make any sense, like they're not logical.
And spontaneous remission, that's a medical term. When somebody goes from, somebody like Anita Morjani goes from having over 40 tumors in her body on life support, goes to the other side while on life support, has a conversation being told she can stay or she can go back. And she says, I can't go back. My body's done. There's nothing I can do. I can't live in that body. And they just say, oh yeah, you can heal it. And boom, she wakes up, and within weeks, she heals her body of over 40 cancerous tumors. And a lot of people chalk that up to spontaneous remission because nothing was done to augment that healing. It just happened. And we are living constantly in a reality where forced evolution, spontaneous evolution, and spontaneous remission are occurring constantly, which means, therefore, we are constantly reality jumping. It's a part of being human. It's the way we exist in matter. Everything around us is constantly changing, and we are constantly changing. And sometimes you can figure out why the change occurred, and most of the time you can't.
I totally agree with that. And I like the way you put that.
It feels safe.
Yeah.
It feels normal. I'm like, okay, this is the new normal. The new normal is knowing that everything is going to change around you all the time. So we take it a step further, and you read Cynthia Sue Larson's books and you go, why not make the changes positive in favor of what I would like to experience instead of jumping willy-nilly, haphazardly into whatever happens?
Exactly.
So you start to steer the reality boat or the reality bubble. You start to steer it.
And that's what we should do. We are the captains of our own ship. We are the authors of our own book. Yeah, let's start writing. Let's not let other people write it for us.
No, and your wonderful videos. I love your videos because they're always on topic and completely different to the other videos that are out there. They're things that I haven't considered. I was a huge fan of Gilligan's Island. I grew up watching it every day after school in the 70s, the reruns. And my eyes shifted from blue to green. And I have no idea when they became green. It was gradual. It was a gradual process. And it definitely occurred when I became Mandela affected. My shift of my eye color occurred when I started to realize everything was changing around me.
Isn't that really something? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I call it an oracle indicator. Like it's a way to show that something has changed, almost like the Mona Lisa, who's appears to be smiling a lot more, and almost to the
Mm-hmm.
point where like the sides, you know, when you smile, like the sides of your eyes go up, you can even see that. And I know before she wasn't smiling. She didn't seem to be that
We
happy.
didn't know if she was smiling. Like, is she smiling
Yeah,
or not?
exactly.
Is
Exactly.
she smiling? It was this, it's called enigmatic, isn't it? The enigmatic smile. Is she or isn't she? Now she's clearly grinning.
Now she clearly is, and I think it's an indicator of the timeline that we're in, that it's getting better. She's like, oh, you guys are, you're starting to pick up on it. When she's got a really big smile, then I'm going to be really happy. And I actually have a duplicate, not the original Mona Lisa. I have like a picture of the Mona Lisa behind me and on the wall that you can't see. But I always look at it every day. I've got a globe on my desk over here that I look at every day. I'm spotting new changes to the
Oh, good.
as that occurs. But yeah, there's so much going on.
I feel we are changing collectively into a more positive reality. But I also think we have individual reality bubbles that change independent of the collective. So a lot of my Mandela effects are very personal to me.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I've been noticing myself is so many more of the personal ones. Houses that were never there before on my way to work that I've gone 25 years ago. All of a sudden there's like, what, that house was never there. Or the house on the corner that was always like a whitish tan is now like, in one day it went to like a dark brown. And I'm like, did they just paint that house last night?
Yeah,
Like,
in the
those
dark.
painters are good.
Yeah, they're good.
They could paint the whole house overnight. How do they do
Yeah.
that?
Instant house painting, forced house painting, and spontaneous house painting. Boom, it's done.
Exactly.
Like kind of like, you know, those old shows we used to watch, like I Dream of Jeannie. She'd just blink her eyes and it was done. And Bewitched would twitch her nose and it was done. It's like those shows were programming us to realize that this is the power that we really have in our personal lives. We have the power to change anything. And collectively, we have the power to change anything. It takes will, it takes effort, it takes energy, you know? And I think this whole new reality bubble, yeah, humanity is waking up to what the potential is, the true potential for humanity. And then, of course, the true potential for me in my lifetime. What do I want to experience while I'm in the here now?
I know it seems, I don't know if you find this to be the case also, but it seems that manifesting is even becoming more, it's just happening more quickly, or things that,
Yeah, spontaneous.
yeah,
If I can do a quick book plug, you know, I mean,
please.
I wrote a book called 40 Days and 40 Nights Manifestation Key. It's very small. It's about 111 pages and it's very economically priced. It's worldwide, of course, on Amazon and Kindle, because that's the easiest way to get it out to the world. You can't mail them out to bookstores anymore. And that looks at the biblical significance of 40 days and 40 nights and the manifestation that Jesus and so many others like Noah experienced. And I guess this is part of the revelations, even though I'm talking about cosmic revelations this year, that's more of a biblical revelation of manifestation. And it transcends many different religions. Many different religions around the world at some point gave significance to the number 40. Well, the year 2020, if you do numerology on it and you add the 2 and the 0 and the 2 and the 0, it's a 4 year. If you look at biblically the significance of 40 and you add the 4 and the 0, it's a 4. And if you look at Freemasonry and mystical schools and I guess they call it occult, which means hidden, but metaphysical information, the 4 is extremely important because it is the 4 corners of a chair, the 4 corners of a house, the 4 corners of a room. It's the north, the south, the east, and the west. You know, it's the number 4. Even the pyramids had 4 sides. So the number 4 is all about foundations, building strong foundations. And right now I'm finding that my manifestation skills have really speeded up.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's funny as you're saying that, you know, we're recording this in May of 2020. We're still in what's called the lockdown situation. Right at the beginning of this whole situation, I'm in my car and I'll see a license plate and it had like 666 on it. And I started seeing 666s in these random places. I got my credit card, a new one came in. I didn't even ask for it, didn't even expire. My security code was 666. And I'm like, what the heck is this? It's kind of scary. And then we're into the quarantine. A few weeks ago, they sent me another credit card. Again, I didn't even ask for it. Same credit card. They changed my security code to 044. So I'm like, I got rid of it. But it's almost like some people have talked about, if you want to put this in computer terms, like Armageddon software being activated with code 666. So to me, I was almost like getting messages that it was trying to be activated, but now the 4 4s have taken over, and now I'm seeing 4 4s everywhere. So when you said the 4s, that triggered something.
Yeah, 4 is very, very active at the moment with what we're going through, which is shifting out the old and bringing in the new, building the foundation for the new earth, for the golden age, for heaven on earth, fourth density, 5D, whatever you want to call it. It's always, or a yuga that we're going to go through. It's building the foundation for it now. We're at the beginning of it. And when you go up and you see the 555s, you're talking about earth energy numerologically when you look at 5s. When you look at 6s, you're adding spiritual dimension to the earth energy of the 5. So you're actually moving up octaves, like they say in the Law of One, or the Theosophists say, Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, Alice Bailey. You're moving up. And 666, as the sign of the beast, is the sign of humanity. It is the sign of material existence. And I'll tell you why. There are 6 neutrons, 6 protons, and 6 electrons in carbon 12. And our body is mostly made up of carbon 12. And the earth is mostly made up of carbon 12. And its elemental sign is 666. So once you move out of the realms of Apocalypse and Revelations, and of course both of those words mean uncovering of the hidden.
The unveiling, yes.
The unveiling. So once you get away from the fear of that, the fear of the uncovering, the fear of the knowledge, the fear of the unveiling, you realize that 666 is not a bad number. In fact, that's probably why I can't speak for them. That's probably why CERN used 666 in its logo, because they were looking for the God particle, remember, which they say they found.
Right.
The God particle, kind of at the same time that a lot of people woke up to the Mandela Effect.
True. That's absolutely true. Okay, so Eileen, one of the things that you had mentioned were cosmic revelations.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Thanks for asking. This year, I'm going to present from my book, Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe, which I am one of 4 contributors. Shane Robinson, who's also speaking and spoke last year, he wrote a portion of this book. So did Vanessa VA. Everybody in the community knows her channel. And Paulo Pinto, who has the channel in Australia called Spirit Walker. And in my section of the book, I really felt like focusing on what's going on out there through hard sciences that correlates with what's going on in here in terms of expanding consciousness, experiencing a Mandela effect. Now, these are correlations. They're not causes. I haven't proven any causes, but that's where you always start the investigative process of science. You look at what happens here that also happens here, and you try to figure out, pardon me, you try to figure out if there's a correlation between them. And one of the things that we've all noticed in this community is the rising and spiking and erratic Schumann resonance.
Yes, yes.
Most of the graphs we see are not the graphs on Hertz. When you see a graph on the Hertz, which is supposed to be around 7.83, 7.82 is normal, you'll see a wavy line. What we're seeing with the blue background and then the white spikes, that's the amplitude. That's the loudness of the Schumann resonance, spiking way above 100, 120, 140. Sometimes it goes off the charts. But when you look at the actual Hertz of the Schumann resonance, it's going as high as 40 and above 40. And when you hit 40 Hertz, you are now in what's called the gamma waves of the brain function. And when you rise up, you know, through theta and delta and alpha, and you get into gamma, that's where they say manifestation occurs. That's where they say miracles start to occur. So we have the earth vibrating in a hertz. A hertz is a pattern, and as the wave goes faster, the hertz go up, and as the waves slow down, like we're in delta, we're in theta, we're sleeping, then suddenly we start to dream and we go into gamma, and our eyes start to move with rapid eye movement. The earth is doing that. The earth itself is going into manifestation and miracle waves, which is normally between 40 and 100.
What do you think is causing the spikes in the Schumann resonance?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because I thought, what's causing these spikes in the Schumann resonance? And what I found briefly, that I'll go over more in depth during the conference, is there are a lot of things that are affecting the Schumann resonance. But the most important thing that's affecting it is the magnetosphere. And yes, when there's a lot of lightning, that can change the Schumann resonance because there's a lot of excitability in the air. But what's happening to the magnetosphere, which is called the magnetic shield or the magnetic field, is it is being pulled and tugged at from a scientific observation basis. This is highly reported and easy for you to do the research on yourself. And it's been getting more and more scattered over the decades. So I looked back from the 1970s to present, every 10 years, the magnetosphere is getting thinner and longer. It's getting stretched out. So then that leads to the question, what is stretching out and tugging on our magnetosphere? And that's when you get into multiple theories of cosmic revelations, because some scientists think, like NASA, which a lot of people call never a straight answer, right? Because we don't know if we can believe what they say or not,
Right.
but that's what we've got in terms of science, right? For what's happening out there. They announced in late 2016 that there was a very large planet, or it could be a second sun, they didn't say, that's out past Neptune tugging on our solar system. So it must be absolutely huge, which sounds like Nibiru, which sounds like Planet X, which sounds like Nemesis. They wouldn't call it that. So very conveniently, they removed Pluto's title as a planet in 2006 and then announced this new super planet in 2016, 10 years later. And they will still have 9 planets, 9 spheres. Now you're getting into Dante's mysticism of why they want to have 9, the Tesla number, 9, why that's important. They don't really want to announce Planet 10, Planet Nibiru, or our second binary twin sun, which would be a brown dwarf because we can't see it. Nemesis is out there tugging on not only the Earth's atmosphere, but tugging on the entire solar system. And then you get into other science, which shows that, so here's the Milky Way, and you can look at it from any angle in space, but let's just look at it from this angle straight on. When you look at our solar system within the Milky Way, it's 6 degrees down off the angle of the galaxy, which is impossible. Therefore, something is pulling our solar system down inside of our solar system, or possibly just outside of our solar system. And that is tugging and pulling on the magnetosphere, which is changing the Schumann resonance. And not only that, that is also responsible for, most likely, I can't say 100% for sure, for the pole drift. The magnetic North Pole drifts around. It's moving 60 kilometers south per year. Right now, well, actually about 12 months ago, they tracked it over Siberia. and it's heading for the middle of the Pacific. So the tugging on the solar system might also be tugging on the North Pole, just pulling it down, pulling it down. And then when you go into displacement, crust displacement theory, which I'll cover a little more in depth during the conference, once that North Pole is tugged down and gets close to the equator, the crust comes loose, spins around, and we get a new North Pole. It settles into a new North Pole. And geologists have been tracking this historical, where has the North Pole been historically on Earth? And it's been, Australia was the North Pole, and Vermont and New York were the North Pole. And it can be anywhere in the world can become the North Pole when you have crust displacement, when you have the magnetic north pulled down so far that it has to be resettled. And then we're looking at the Schumann resonance, the magnetosphere, the pole drift, increased earthquakes, tsunamis. It all ties in together. And coincidentally, while all these things are happening to our planet and our solar system, our brain waves are changing. Our consciousness is changing. Our consciousness is expanding so that we can see the Mandela Effect changes as soon as they occur.
Comet Atlas and Comet Swan. Have you been looking into that at all?
I did. I was looking into them for other reasons, because of the current situation, politically and socially. I was looking at the comets because the mystery schools that became our modern Freemasonry, which became our modern form of government, also tracks comets and looks at cosmic things that are going on. And I couldn't really find anything super significant or special to report on, especially when the last comet busted up. Atlas was supposed to get big and bright, and then it just kind of disintegrated.
Yeah, actually, I can give you some of my insight about Atlas. So December 28th, 2019 is when Comet Atlas was first spotted. It was kind of interesting because it was spotted, it should have been spotted long before that, but it wasn't until December 28th. December 28th happens to be my birthday. And on that day, I went to Sri Lanka. Actually, I was there for the week to observe the Ring of Fire solar eclipse, which happened on the morning of December 26th. I went to this special spot in Sri Lanka called Lion's Rock, which is totally unbelievable. It's this sedimentary rock that just juts up into the sky from the plains around it. It's a very sacred spot. So for that trip, I wanted to make sure I was there for the Ring of Fire eclipse. And then on December 28th, I was with my friend Sean Bond, who's also one of the speakers at IMEC. And we went to this place called the Wheel of the Universe. It is a Stargate. And I had a very, very interesting experience there. And there's been documentaries made about this Wheel of the Universe. If you hold either a pendulum or an EMF type device, it goes off the chart, pendulum starts swinging like crazy and all that. So they have this little wrought iron fence that's around it. So it's hard to like touch the inscriptions that are on this rock. But because we're taller and our arms were long, we still could touch it. And then there was someone behind us said, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. So we both did like a meditation. What I do, I call it a hypernova. It's a state that I put myself into with breathing and so forth. And all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, I was on the ground. There was this they have this 3 foot tall wrought iron fence around it with these spikes. One of the spikes hit me above my right eye. I was bleeding. People came over. They were helping me out with all the blood situation. So, and I had an experience. I had an experience that was very personal, and I'm just happy I was there. So on that particular day, Comet Atlas was spotted. So to me, Comet Atlas became like wow, this is pretty cool. A comet was discovered on my birthday. Like, how often does that happen? So,
With Mark Twain, a comet, Halley's Comet, was there the day he was born and the day he died.
really, Mark Twain.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mark Twain.
Because I just found out too about the comet of 1811 and 1812. They called it Napoleon's comet, that came out before the War of 1812,
Uh-huh.
appeared over Russia. And there was another comet event related to Egypt that was the same comet. Anyway, all these things get tied in interestingly. But I believe that Comet Atlas didn't just disintegrate. Like, I don't believe, like, the space community will tell us that comets are made of ice.
Yeah.
I think they're made of rocks. Like, they're not actually big ice cubes. They're actually made of rock. And it was so far away, like the sun can't melt it. That, in any event, I believe there was something else that happened. I also believe that Comet Atlas is from the destroyed planet Maldek.
Okay.
Swan is from Tiamat. So Atlas is the masculine, Swan is the feminine. And I know this is going to sound kind of out there, but from what I've been feeling and sensing and getting information, that they're in love. Atlas and Swan, the two comets, and at some point towards the end of May, they're supposed to get near each other, and they could have some kind of intersection. But there was just
And comet babies. They might make comet babies if they bump into each other.
Yeah, exactly. There's also a fertility thing going on.
Yeah.
I was reading into it, that we could see a spike in not just humans, but animal life, sea life, vegetation, like all these like interesting growth type things. Anyway, I think there's a lot going on with the comets. Like, that could be a whole discussion.
It could, and comets are very significant. They really are. And I always was taught, but you never know if what you're taught is true or not. We always find that the truth is always a little bit hidden. You got to go find it. And I was always taught that comets were made of ice and space dust. So tiny rocks, but not like a meteor, which is like a big chunk of a rock or a planet or something big and solid. But who knows? Who knows? Has anybody gone out and seen these comets up close and personal?
Well, I know we've landed on at least one asteroid, and I know we have what was the other Amawao? I'm saying,
yes, that one looked like a cigar.
Yeah, it looked like a cigar.
Shaped.
And all of a sudden, like, it changed trajectory and sped up, like things that it wasn't supposed to do. So
they thought, is it a spaceship? Is it, it looks like rock
through
the telescope? Rock. Yeah.
What's the moon? Is the moon just a big rock, or could the moon
if
be
you
more
look
to
at
it?
The Russians said that it rang like a bell.
Yeah. So there's a lot that we're going to figure out. There's a lot that's going to be unveiled, right?
Right, because we're seeing through the veil. It's the revelations. And we have to do the work ourselves. Nobody's going to come up to us and say, hey, this is exactly what's happening. We have to figure it out.
Yes, exactly. It's very personal. And then the answers are within us. Like, we actually have the answers, and we know when something is true. It kind of resonates, like, oh my God, that makes sense.
I call it my internal truth detector. And gnosis. It's gnosis. It's knowing. And when they say you have to go in to go out, when you study the Monroe documents and astral projection and remote viewing, you have to go in first to go out. Right. I think that's where we get our information from. I think we have to go inside to get the true information.
And that's why meditation is so important, right?
I think so. But I've been meditating at least an hour a day for decades and decades and decades, because I was in a very stressful job in news, and I found it really relaxed me and centered me. And now I'm finding that I'm tapped in and tuned in to a higher awareness of information. And I can even discern if I've seen something or heard something, whether or not that's true for me. I can't tell if it's true for somebody else's reality bubble,
right?
But I can tell whether it's true for me in the here and the now.
Exactly. And we have to learn to start trusting ourselves. Because, like, even with the Mandela Effect, the science community will say that you're just misremembering, or you're confabulating.
This is just so funny, because I have like a full journalism degree and a half a psychology degree from the University of Chicago, Loyola University in Chicago. And even though it's an old, outdated information and degree, they taught us about false memory and confabulation. And I'm telling you, that has nothing to do with the Mandela effect, because you can't have a personal confabulation or false memory with a million other people that's exactly the same.
Exactly.
That's not possible.
Exactly.
So they need to come up with something better than that.
You know what? That's the best they got so far, but it also reveals who they are. Like, it reveals that why are they trying to deceive us? Like, why not, like, why not say, like, wow, we don't know what this is. Let's look at it more, and just shutting people down that spot.
At this point, they avoid it. If you've noticed, there's very little contrary news on the Mandela effect. They're avoiding it because they don't know how to handle it yet. They don't know how to handle it in a way that they can control the outcome.
Yes.
So they're quiet. They're just quiet about it.
Yeah, the Mandela effect is very interesting. It really is. It is.
It is. And in Mandela, Nelson Mandela's prison number is the number 666.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We're going back to carbon-based spirit in carbon. Spirit having a physical experience is what we're getting at. And CERN with the 666, looking for the God particle, and carbon 12. It's all interrelated in kind of a wonderful, mysterious way.
Yeah, and I say it's the consequence of retribution to those that are manipulating the natural order. So there's different ways you can look at this as well, but the Mandela effect is revealing things. It's revealing truths to us. Yeah.
It is. And I think we're now in charge. And when we realize that collectively we have a lot more power than the few who are schooled in the mystery schools, their families have been for at least 2, 4, 5,000, 6,000 years, if you go back, pre-Mesopotamia, pre-Sumerian mythology. They know this. They teach these mystical ideas of why we need to manipulate the masses. Why do we have to control their media? Because the masses create the matter here. So if we let them know that their thoughts edit and change matter, then they're going to do what they want to do here. And we don't want that to happen. So we need to control all the media so that they only think and believe what we want them to think and believe. And then they're kind of the engines creating the material world just for us, just for the few. And that's wrong. And that's got to change.
Yeah, these are the secrets that groups like the Illuminati have held, or other secret societies.
They're all interrelated. When you trace them back, they're all interconnected. They're the same people.
And all that stuff has to go away. It has to crumble, turn to ash, because humans are waking up. We're not going to be able to be manipulated again, basically, is what it comes down to.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful evolution of human consciousness. And we are so lucky to be a part of that change and to be at the beginning of it.
Yes.
So these are really exciting times. And the more you approach things with wonder instead of fear, the easier it is to understand what's going on around you. As soon as you start to feel fearful, you contract. And then you don't understand what's going on around you. Like when they used to say volcanoes went off because there were mad gods and goddesses living inside them. That was a total fear-based explanation of something that's natural. Well, when you start saying that a few men in white lab coats are creating the Mandela effect, you're doing the same thing as saying that there's a god or goddess in that volcano that just blew it off, right? You're saying a few humans can change everything. The entire solar system and galaxy can be changed by a few humans in white lab coats. And really the power is within you. It's within you and the collective to change the matter.
Right. And if you allow it, and you even allow it by not even knowing you're allowed, but as soon as you know, say no more. I do not consent.
I do not consent, and I am going to change the matter in a way that not only benefits me and my family, but I'm going to change it so that it benefits everybody. Right. Because nature loves cooperation. Nature loves cooperation, and cooperation is good and healthy and whole. And when we start acting like that as a humanity, then the goodness will spread out for everybody, not just the few.
Exactly. Exactly. Eileen, this was like an awesome interview. Thank you so much.
This was fun.
Yeah,
I
this is
loved
great.
it. I'm done. Now I don't have to show up at the conference, right? We
Yeah,
just
no,
did it.
no, no, no. Now you've made us like extra excited to hear your presentation. So you better show
Okay.
up.
I will.
I can't wait. That's great. Yeah, to hear
This
you
was
go into
fun.
details about these things and to add
Absolutely.
your perspective and your wisdom.
Oh,
Really
thank you,
appreciate it.
Chris. I really enjoyed sitting down with you and chatting about it.
Same here, and I'll make sure that we include the links to your Amazon books and the work that you've
Oh,
done,
thank you. Yeah, the Mandela Effect, friend or foe.
and the other one about manifesting in 40 days.
Yeah, 40 days and 40 nights, manifestation key, looking at spiritual, biblical, religious manifestation and the number 4.
Yeah, and I think that's especially important too, because as manifestation becomes easier, we also have to be responsible in our manifestation as well. Like,
Yeah, and you are responsible as soon as you do it for the good of all. That's
yes,
ultimate responsibility being taken. As long as you're manifesting just for you, just for you, just for you, that's not the ultimate responsibility. As soon as you start manifesting for everybody, then it suddenly, the universe gets behind it and gives it oomph.
exactly. And that's exactly what I tell people, even in business as well. Quantum businessman, what is he all about? But it's
Ah,
all about that being able, well, that starts with like the leadership or CEO of a company becoming spiritually aware, becoming abundant, being able to like spread that abundance and show like the results of good karma, doing good things. And, all those things come back to you. If you do things on a selfish thing, yeah, you might be successful for a little while, but why do you want that backlash? It's not worth it.
yeah, you
So
close yourself out off to the universal flow. And I love the idea that you're the quantum businessman because it took this side of a spiritual phenomenon, right,
mhm.
into business. And that's awesome because that's where we need it. We need it in government, we need it in business, we need it in banking.
Yeah, and I just want to add too, like with everything that's happening, like from what I'm seeing in my world, like of all the businesses that I already know are never going to open again, that people don't even realize, there's a very interesting, I'm going to call it a type of collapse of the economic system. And everyone's going to be pointing fingers at each other. The government did this. They shouldn't have printed up too much money, or whatever the deal is. It doesn't matter. It's like the universe has a balance sheet, and it's being audited. And if you come up short in the audit, you got to pay for it one way or another. And a lot of
Hmm.
these businesses that have done things in a nefarious way, illegal way, et cetera, like those type of things will be exposed. And I believe
Good.
even going into the future too, you're going to hear about powerful people, wealthy people, all of a sudden strange things happening, like bizarre deaths of their family members or craziness that's happening. And, why are these things happening to certain people or famous people? It's all part of like an auditing process that is, we're in the road to like straightening out the balance sheet so we can go forward with something better. That's my opinion.
That's great because you're talking about hermetic laws where even water seeks a balance. It always looks for its level. The whole universe is doing that. The whole planet is doing that. Whether you think it's round or flat, it doesn't matter. Earth is doing that. It's constantly seeking equilibrium and balance.
Right.
And when you work within balance, it becomes easier. And when you work against balance, it becomes very difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I love that. I love that you're bringing this kind of metaphysics into business.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people going forward. Just
Yeah.
there has to be a whole business model change so that we all can share in abundance. We all can share in
Absolutely.
abundance. Yeah, because the earth is here to give us abundance.
Oh, yeah.
We've just been isolated from it, but now we're reconnecting in a big way.
And we can change that. We can change it from the imbalance of just a few having everything and most having nothing to most having everything because it's shared, it's cooperative, it's compassionate.
And that's what Earth wants for her children.
I think
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome.
Eileen, thank you very much. We
Thank you,
will
Chris.
we will see you at the IMEC 2020 in June.
I will be there
All
with
right.
bells and whistles on and more information on cosmic revelations.
All right. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.